Hey Rachel, good to see you. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. All right, so what would a good session look like for you today?
Helping me come to a conclusion or some type of solution around the relationship with my dad that's been really weighing on me lately.
Okay. So what I'll probably do is ask just a whole bunch of questions, and then, it may even sound like I'm not talking about the issue directly.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, I'll give you some ideas about directions we can take. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome. So if therapy works, what would better look like?
Just deciding, whether or not to have a relationship with my dad. It's something that has been really weighing on me. We haven't had a relationship or talked in almost 5 years. So, just kind of deciding if I want to open that door or not, or just kind of let it go and let it be.
Okay, so relationship, help me understand what a relationship would look like.
So I guess my definition of a relationship was, being involved with like my husband and like family and spending time with one another, having that connection.
Okay, so like your husband and your dad may be hanging out or spending time at Christmas or your holiday. That for you would be a relationship that you would like to have with your dad.
For sure.
Okay, and so I guess what I'm hearing you say is that you don't normally call your dad. You don't normally invite him to those things.
Yeah, we had a major falling out around the time I got married, and we just really haven't talked ever since.
So if counseling works, you're going to start calling him and inviting him to things, even though you may still hold a grudge about what happened at your wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not grudge, maybe just strong feelings. I don't know what
Yeah,
sounds better to you.
I would probably say strong feelings. There's a lot of hurt around that time.
Okay. All right. So help me understand, kind of where you are in the family lineup. Like, are you the oldest child, middle child, or are you an only child?
Only child, so my parents got divorced when I was 3. My parents had me really young. They were both 19. So my dad ended up getting remarried to my stepmom when I was 6. And with our custody agreement, I was every other weekend type deal. And my dad was pretty young in his career, so a lot of time I spent more time with his parents than I did actually with my dad.
Okay, wow. All right. So when you think about your teenage years, like think about what were you really good at? What were people giving you compliments for?
Probably my performance in sports.
Okay. All right. What'd you get in trouble for?
What did I get in trouble for? Probably hanging out with friends late at night, doing
So like
teenage
breaking
things.
curfew? What,
Yeah,
like, okay.
breaking curfew, yes.
Okay, now did you get in trouble for that or did you get away with that?
I feel like in the moment it was like a little bit of trouble, but I ultimately got away with it.
Okay. All right. So you weren't necessarily doing things that were making your parents upset, but you knew it was wrong because they told you about the rules.
Right.
Okay. And so when you think about sort of your life now and what it compares to when you were, say, in your 20s, how is it different?
How is my life different now? It's a lot different. My grandparents were really instrumental in that point, and I feel like I would say that I have like a lot more independence, especially like in college and things like that.
Okay.
Starting college young, I was really independent.
What does independence mean? Like, what does that
Just
look like for you?
living on my own, making decisions, cooking my own meals, just making a lot of big girl decisions without them.
So that means they weren't aware of your decisions, or maybe you would talk about the decision with them and then you'd make your own decision anyway.
Probably with the first option, I don't think that they knew a lot about my choices, let's say.
Wow. Okay. So thinking back to when you were a kiddo, would you do the same thing, kind of just make your own decisions, or do you feel like you had to fight to make your own decisions?
No, I think I would just kind of do my own thing.
All right. So didn't necessarily even have to tell mom and dad.
Yeah.
All right. So when you experienced, I'm going to say, difficulty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it when you were doing things on your own that nobody really knew about, or was it when you were trying to have the conversation with mom or dad or your grandparents?
Probably the communication piece. I don't really feel like I struggled making good decisions or, my decisions. It was more about having that open dialogue around it.
So you make a decision and you feel pretty good about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out okay.
Yeah, most of the time.
Okay. But when you try to make a joint decision with these other kind of important people in your life, then you run into some problems.
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is, involving your dad in your life would be a decision that you're making
Mm-hmm.
on your own, right? Like this is what you want. You want dad in your life until you have to actually communicate that to him. And now all of a sudden it becomes a decision that's involving more than just you and your husband.
Right. I hear that. That makes sense.
Okay. So one of the things about relationships and folks, and we think about them in terms of geometry. So if you think of like two people are a dyad, that's two, three people are a triangle, right? And so it's really pretty cool with two people. A dyad is a very, very stable relationship until stress is involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like if you and I are having lunch and then I tell you I forgot my wallet and it's the third time this month, suddenly where we could have been having a nice lunch, now you're thinking, oh, well, that sucks because Kate forgot her wallet again. So you may wait till you get into the car and then phone a third person. And you may say, oh my gosh, Kate stiffed me again, right? So I feel pretty good because you paid for my lunch. You feel good because you phoned a friend. But now your friend is walking around carrying around this idea that, oh my gosh, this horrible thing has happened between these two people that I know, right? So we talk about triangulation, and triangulation is sometimes a way to stabilize a system,
Mm-hmm.
right? When two people are having difficulty, all right? So one of the things I want to suggest to you is that we think about these relationships in terms of triangles. Can you think of a triangle or relationship where maybe two people aren't getting along, but then they draw in this third thing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Are you
what
wanting me
comes
to
to
give an
mind?
example?
Sure. What comes to mind?
I don't know. Even I think in my side of my family, like with my mom and my grandma, I definitely think that I get drawn into some of their arguments or like the chaos.
Okay, so I'm going to say that back to you. So it sounds to me like mom and grandma don't get along. And when that system destabilizes, they invite you in to be that third point.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you enter as the third point, you feel like the system stabilizes at that point. So mom feels pretty good, grandma feels pretty good.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's more relaxed when that happens.
Okay, but what does that do to you?
I kind of feel like I take on a little bit of anxiety, or I kind of feel kind of the uncertainty in their relationship.
So it's almost like you're taking on that stabilizing role for those two. And that's maybe something you've had to do your entire life.
Yeah.
And that's not something you necessarily are aware of or even like.
Yeah, definitely I don't care for it. That's for sure.
Okay. So what if a goal for therapy was thinking about how to find another role for you, another job other than the point of the triangle?
Okay. That's
okay. Now, for just a second, would you do a feeling check-in for me when I say that? So happy, sad, mad, afraid, surprised, just some kind of a feeling word when I offer you an opportunity to find another job in your family besides triangle point.
Nervous.
Nervous? Awesome. All right. So nervous because, and this time I want you to put an I on it. Nervous because
Okay. Nervous because I don't know how they're going to respond to that.
Okay. So kind of considering what we've talked about, you're noticing that if you're not the point, you're not the stabilizer,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what's going to happen, right? That's kind of the definition of unstable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So walking into these situations, it might actually be to your advantage to make these decisions without consulting anybody.
Okay.
Especially if you're going to continue to be the role of triangle point. All right. So how does it feel when I say that?
I mean, it makes sense. I feel like it's just something that I'm going to have to work through because it's, being in that situation, you know, is really uncomfortable and causes me anxiety. But, you know, taking this new step, you know, I could have a different outcome.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it could, right? Because if we know the geometry of the situation and we know that, you know, you're kind of drawn to this point role, because when you came in, you said a good outcome for therapy would be you inviting your dad over for a holiday. Okay. The other outcome I think I heard you say was your husband and your dad even having a conversation without you. Right? So both of those things for me sound like dyads, right?
Right.
And so I wonder if you're worried that that could be very unstable, right? Since there are just two of you.
Right. That makes sense.
Okay. So when you think about successful counseling, then we'd almost have to stabilize that dyad. And we know we can't stabilize your dad, right? Because he's not here, right? We never try to counsel somebody who didn't show up for therapy, right? And to be fair, we didn't invite your dad to therapy, but he's kind of in the room with you, even though he didn't show up, right? Or he's not physically in the room.
Right.
So we can really only stabilize, we meaning you, one point in that dyad, right? So if you're giving up the role of the point, and you're going to try to stabilize one of those points in the dyad, sounds like that point has to be you.
Yeah.
Okay, so do
truth behind that.
Do a check-in. How do you feel when I say that?
Kind of, again, that nervous, anxious feeling, because it does come down to me. It's, you know, thinking about I can't control anybody else, so that it comes down to how I handle myself.
So nervous, anxious, if things go wrong, nervous, anxious, if dad doesn't respond well, nervous, anxious.
Yeah. I think my biggest fear with reaching out would be like the rejection piece of him not reciprocating.
Reciprocating.
Or wanting to have this relationship with me.
Wanting, what would that look like if he wanted? Like you said, hey, Dad, you want to come over for Thanksgiving? He would say?
Hopefully, like, yes, that he would come, but just willingness to try again, even though we've had like a lot of conflict.
So you would have to experience this not knowing, right, of the conversation. Then there's a possibility of some real pain if he said, no, I don't want to come, or sure, I'll come, and then not show up.
Right. I think it's the fear of the disappointment.
So one of the things we might want to throw out there for our goal together, working together in counseling, is what are you doing? And I'm going to introduce a term, self-soothing, right? How are you managing your reaction, not knowing how this dyad is going to go? Or we could find a third thing for you, right? Because we know the triangle kind of works, right? It's a good deal. So if you do feel like something is going wonky when you're talking to your dad, what's a third thing that you could draw in that could kind of stabilize that?
Maybe getting that need met somewhere else, maybe like another relationship that's meaningful.
Anything coming to mind?
Maybe with my godparents, kind of relying on that relationship.
Okay. So it sounds like you have a pretty cool family, and that there are a lot of different dynamics and dyads and triads and maybe even some particular relationships where you have not had to serve as the point of the triangle. So how awesome is that, right? So one thing I'd like you to do before you come back and see me again is something called a genogram, right? So I want you to do some homework for me. I want you to Google genogram, and there's some cool ones that'll pop up. There's one for Freud. I think there's one for the Kennedys. So you can see that different symbols represent each family member. And it'll also allow you to ask your family lots of questions, so you'll get to know the people. And then what I'll do is I'm going to help you create this cool diagram where we're going to track different things that go on in your family. And it doesn't really matter. We can track education level, we can track divorces, we can track, I don't know, what do you think might be interesting to kind of track in your family?
I think the education piece will be really different, just because I'm thinking about, you know, how it might differ on both sides of my family, like my mom and my dad's side.
Okay, what else? Try to come up with maybe two more things.
Okay. I know that in my family, like we have a lot of history of like divorce and like remarriage.
Right.
Maybe even substance use.
Perfect. All right. So just those three things for now. And you don't have to buy any special software. If you want to do it by hand, that's fine. It's okay if it's not even complete, but I would like you to do 3 generations. Now, do you have kids?
No.
Okay. So you and your husband, and your parents, and then your grandparents. Okay.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about that more when you come in.
All right. That sounds good.
All right. You have any questions for me?
Nope.
Awesome. All right. I'll see you in a week.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye.